Good evening, you're watching the news from the Sultan of Oman television. First, the headlines. Thousands of displaced Syrians return home after rebels and the government reach a ceasefire deal in the south. The British Prime Minister warns ministers that she will no longer tolerate public criticism of the government on her latest Brexit policy. And Omantel signs an agreement to establish a regional centre for interconnection in the Mideast. Those are the headlines, and now for the news in detail. Thousands of displaced Syrians were heading home today after rebels and the government reached a ceasefire deal in the south, following more than 2 weeks of deadly bombardment under the agreement announced yesterday after talks between the rebels and Moscow. Opposition fighters will hand over territory in the southern province of Dara near the Jordanian border. Dara is seen as the cradle of the uprising that sparked Syria's 7-year war. A Russian-backed government offensive in Dara has displaced more than 320,000 people since June 19, including tens of thousands who fled the south to the sealed border with Jordan. Calm reigned over the region today as the two sides finalized the ceasefire deal. Yesterday's accord follows a string of similar deals with rebels for other areas of Syria. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said today he had made progress on almost all of the central issues in talks with North Korea, including on setting a timeline for its denuclearization. Speaking to reporters after talks in Pyongyang, he said the two sides agreed to hold discussions on July the 12th on the repatriation of remains of Americans killed in the 1950-53 Korean War, and also discussed modalities for the denuclearization of a missile engine testing facility. Before leaving North Korea for Tokyo, Pompeo shook hands with his counterpart Kim Jong-chol, a top North Korean party official and former spy agency chief, with whom he played a key role in arranging an unprecedented summit between the U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore on June 12th. Britain's Prime Minister is claiming victory in her bid to unite her fractious cabinet behind her latest Brexit policy, but many hurdles lie ahead. Theresa May is seeking to squelch public dissent from Conservative Party colleagues by warning ministers she will no longer tolerate public criticism of the government policy now that the cabinet has backed her following a 12-hour meeting that ended late last night. May said the cabinet endorsed plans for a free future trade deal with the European Union that would keep some close ties to the bloc, even as it ends freedom of the movement between Britain and the EU. Since becoming Prime Minister nearly 2 years ago, May, whose party does not enjoy a majority in Parliament, has tolerated outspoken criticism from senior ministers. She has now signalled, however, in a letter to the Conservative Party legislators that ministers who dissent in public will be dismissed now that collective responsibility has been restored.
In detailed discussions today, the Cabinet has agreed our collective position on the future of our negotiations with the EU. And our proposal will create a UK-EU free trade area, which establishes
Militants from Somalia's Al-Shabaab group stormed a government building housing the security and interior ministers today, after twin bombings wounded at least 17 people nearby in central Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab wants to topple Somalia's Western-backed central government, expel the African Union-mandated peacekeeping force, AMISOM, and establish a government based on its own strict interpretation of Islamic Sharia law. Somalia has been gripped by violence and lawlessness since the toppling of Mohamed Siad Barre in the early 1990s. The death toll from record downpours in Japan jumped to at least 30, with more than 1.9 million people ordered to evacuate today, as heavy rain continued to strike large areas in the west of the country. Intense rainfall triggered huge landslides and flash floods in the Hiroshima and many other regions, while hampering rescue operations with dozens of people reportedly missing. The Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, ordered his ministers to make an all-out effort to rescue victims. Rescue workers dug into the dirt as landslides crushed many houses, while several people evacuated to their rooftops as floods swamped entire residential areas in parts of Okayama region. Some areas have been hit by more than a meter of rainfall. The Japanese Meteorological Agency upgraded its alert system to the highest level only issued when the amount of rain is expected to be the highest in decades in large areas of western Japan, whilst lifting the warnings in other regions. Archaeologists in Peru have uncovered an extensive Incan burial site inside an adobe pyramid in a coastal desert valley far from the Andrea heart of the empire. 24 cave-like tombs with human remains and pottery from the Incan culture have been unearthed so far at the site. The findings was a reminder of the vast terrain from the Pacific coast to the high Andes that the Incan Empire, using a network of roads and a labor-based tax system, controlled before the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. Tucumay, some 400 miles north of the Peruvian capital Lima, is believed to have been the first settled by the Lambayeque coastal people at the turn of the 12th century, before being occupied by the Chimu culture and later the Incan Empire some 500 years ago. Archaeologists hope the discoveries will tell them more about the so-called Pyramids of the Bees, where the tombs were found, one of the several adobe structures at the site. Still to come in our news bulletin. Shababi is a training program that aims to preserve Omani heritage and acquaint young generations with craft industries.
عبق فاح بين جنباتها، فنفثت سلاما برائحة لبانها. حلقت عاليا نحو السماء، فنقشت بأبجدياتها تاريخا جميلا، وبكرمها أمست مضربا للأمثال. مهرجان صلالة السياحي 2018 من 10 من يوليو إلى 25 من أغسطس.
Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. Her Excellency Dr. Madiha bin Ahmed Al Shibaniya, a Minister of Education, approved the general indicators of the results of the General Diploma exams for the first round of the scholastic year 2017 to 2018. The Ministry pointed out that the results will be available starting from 12 noon on Monday, the 9th of July 2018 via SMS service through Omantel and Ooredoo by sending a message to the number 90200 containing the seat number. They will be available later through the Sultanate of Oman educational portal. Oman telecommunication company Omantel has signed with Equinox International Group an agreement to establish a regional center for interconnection in the Mideast. The geographical location of the Sultanate, situated in the middle of Asia, Africa and Europe continents, qualified it to establish this important center. The center will be built in the Wilaya of Barka in the Governorate of South Batna on an area of 18,600 square feet. It is expected to be operated in the second quarter of 2019. At the completion of the project, the data center in the Sultanate will be part of a platform consisting of 200 data centers around the world, which will give access to the business environment. The number of passengers through Muscat International Airport and Salalah Airport increased during May 2018 to reach more than 6.6 million, according to the National Center for Statistics and Information. The passengers in Muscat International Airport reached more than 6.1 million last May. Meanwhile, in Salalah Airport, the number of passengers by the end of May 2018 reached around 516,470, as the number of flights reached 4,432. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry issued a ministerial decision considering 3 foreign standards as mandatory Omani standards. The specifications determined in the decision included the standards of industrial furnace fuel made of used engine oils, commercial furnaces made of used engine oils, and fuel oil. The standards aimed at developing the requirements for fuel oil and regularizing the handling of used oil as furnaces and protecting the environment. The new companies enlisted in the Muscat security market, MSM, led the market value to increase by 17.6 billion Omani Rials by the end of last week. The trading value at MSM rose by 31.5 million Omani Rials. It is worth mentioning that the trading atmosphere at Muscat security market during last week was quiet, as the number of deals implemented reached 1,507. Export Credit Guarantee Agency of Oman said that the total value of its works during the first quarter of the current year reached 25,651,000 Omani Rials, of which the exports amounted of 19,329,000 Rials. The agency also pointed out that the total local works amounted to more than 6 million Rials. Heritage activities were held in the Governorate of Muscat. They consisted of a heritage exhibition, a workshop for pottery making and craft industries. These activities came as part of Shababi program being organised by the Ministry of Sports Affairs in various governorates of the Sultanate. They came to preserve Omani heritage and acquaint the younger generation with craft industries. Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Cloudy skies will prevail over the coastal areas of the governorates of Dhofar and its nearby mountains, with chances of intermittent drizzle. The rest of the Sultanate will have clear skies with chances of cloud accumulation and scattered rainfall over the Hajar Mountains. Low clouds and fog late at night and early morning are expected over the coasts of the Arabian Sea and the Sea of Oman. Winds will be southeasterly light to moderate, and seas will be slight with moderate, with a maximum wave height of 1.45 meters. This is the Sultan of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Thousands of displaced Syrians return home after rebels and the government reach a ceasefire deal in the south. The British Prime Minister warns ministers she will no longer tolerate public criticism of the government on her latest Brexit policy. And Omantel signs an agreement to establish a regional centre for interconnection in the Mideast. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsrooms and the studio, it's good night.